welcome to SpeakuP Monday here at Tropical Nomad. Round of applause. Oh, it works. So SpeakuP Monday, tonight our guest is my brother from definitely another mother, same father. Tomas Diez Ladera, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Robert, for the invitation. It's a pleasure for me to be at SpeakuP Mondays.
No, welcome, brother. And so tonight's very interesting because we're talking about, maker spaces, makers lab, MIT. Now, these things meant very little to me prior to the time that we had a chat about 3 weeks ago or more, actually. And what I came to understand is that what you actually do is create spaces for magic to happen. And using, adult toys like 3D printers, computer software, like a DIY for adults, right? But the most important part of it is that, and what I really love, is that you create solutions for local communities, and inventions, which really help to expand and increase the quality of their lives. But then also with this Fab Labs concept is about democratizing that. So in other words, it's not about, in the conventional world, I make something, I own the patents, and I just keep it to myself and I sell it to everybody and make a load of money, right? Whereas what you're doing is saying, well, let's create, invent, and find these amazing solutions and then give them away. Basically open source, so that anyone in any country can reproduce and make that to impact and uplift the quality of the life that they're living, which I think is amazing, brother. So look, I guess first things first, right? So in Bali, you've brought the biggest, I want to let you explain, the biggest digitalization. I'm going to let you explain, and then we can let people know what that is, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes.
I think that you did an amazing job already. You got it completely right, and I think that I couldn't put it in better words, actually. We should get you, get some more space on advertising what we do. Because maybe
I'm available.
I don't know, maybe we're going to say weird stuff and sound maybe overcomplicated, but yeah, in a nutshell, that's what we do. Maybe put it in like in some examples. I think maybe it will help, no? And also with maybe at the same time put in some perspective, no? We live in like an oil-based economy, which only has 120 years old, right? We cannot live without oil, right? It's everywhere. It's like how we move, our clothes, our devices. It's all like we're addicted to oil. We basically sniff oil every day in everything what we do, and it's only 120 years old. And if you think about in comparison with other things that we invented or discovered, like agriculture, 14,000 years old, right? So we believe that there is no world without petrol, first of all. We maybe believe that there is no world without buying things from our little screens and get them shipped, manufactured in China with very cheap labor, transported with very cheap oil in the hands of autocracies and dictators to keep it cheap, and then being sold to people that most of the time don't need those stuff, right? You buy things what someone else made, maybe for a standard of people, and making thousands of them, no? And this is something that I'm not discovering. Many people in the past has been calling for an alert. One of them has been Victor Papanek. There is a very famous book called Design for the Real World, which already in the 70s was anticipating this disaster, right? And saying, hey, we should not give too much power to product and industrial designers because they are the most dangerous species on Earth. Wow. They design things we don't need with materials that they are not sustainable. They make thousands of those things, and they work with the advertisement companies to make us believe that we need them in order to buy them, right? And then that's where we are. We feel like we are trapped in that. We cannot imagine other world that is not based on me going to the shopping mall. We have replaced that with me buying things from our mobile devices or from our computer and getting shipped. So what we're saying, okay, what if we think about how we make things and how we live a little bit differently, right? And when you think about, you mentioned about the open sourcing knowledge. Again, this is nothing new. We have now a very great technology behind what the internet is, thanks to the fact that internet was open. It was an open protocol, right? Now has been captured by the computing power of some companies, It was an open protocol. So what happens if we bring this to the how we make things, no? Instead of having designers patenting things and making exploitation of those things, again, controlling the means of production and controlling the supply chains and the logistics, and the distribution of things, what happens if communities are able to have access to tools? This is not new, by the way, also. Stuart Brand and colleagues in the west coast of the US in the late 60s published a very beautiful magazine called the Whole Earth Catalog, and the title says Access to Tools. And inside the magazine, you will find instructions on how to grow your own food, how to install a solar panel in your house, how to repair stuff, how to actually very DIY, and I'm talking about the 60s, right? So how we can recover that spirit, right? And then connect it with the power that digital tools have, the hyperconnectivity in which we live today, and we start to try. I'm not saying this is the solution, I'm just saying can we try to make things differently? And yeah, I can talk later on maybe about why Bali is so special about this and what's the potential, but that's, as an opening, I believe that there is a question of can we imagine? Do you think that we can imagine? Can you imagine yourself living your life? How you consume, how you wake up every day, what you eat, where your power comes from, where your clothes come from, where your technology comes from. Do you imagine a different way that it can be sourced?
I'll get to that as well. I will get to that. That's why we have a Fab Lab, by the way, because we find the answers there. One thing, obviously we've been through this time of COVID, right? So 2 years with the world lockdown, and I think prior to that, few of us could argue, that the world took this globalization agenda, which basically means, okay, so what is it that my population need or want, or maybe not want? Where does it produces it cheapest? I'm going to import it from there and bring it in, right, and save money. Okay, COVID happened, supply lines interrupted, to put it very nicely. Now realized, okay, so now we're not deglobalization proof. In other words, now we're in trouble because all of those things that we could have produced ourselves, that we were importing because it was cheaper to do so, now we have a challenge because the prices of all of those things have now doubled, tripled, quadrupled, or sometimes 10 times, 10x. So now we have a big problem. Now inflation and all these things at home. So something like this, I think would say that during this time has found a new audience, right? Has found another breath, because now it's well, let's go the opposite way and let's do things on a local level, right? So let's create Fab Labs locally, not this one big behemoth that does everything from one central location and you have to come to me. It's now diversified, right? Or decentralized. So my question to you though is that, where do you think, because you're a very particular person, me and Itchy sat down with you, I remember after Lotta got in touch, and I found you to be very fascinating, right? I meet a lot of people, but I find you fascinating, right? But the question I want to ask you really is that, where do you think this came from? Because it takes a certain mindset, heart set, a certain kind of person who wants to spend a lot of time, maybe not getting paid, right, to find things that have enormous value, but then give them away, right? So if I asked you, where do you think that came from your personal life, what would you say?
In my personal experience, I think
personal life.
Yeah, I'm things that I come from Venezuela, right? I live in in a country that has been blessed with nature, maybe like Indonesia. We had, I think it's the largest reservoir of oil in the world.
Wow.
Right? Or top 5. I'm sure that's the largest, right? And that gives you, in some moment of history, that gave us access to a lot of money, right, as a country. And then what the country did is replacing all the local industry and import things, right? So basically, externalize all your production capacity because you're basically a new rich person, and then you can just buy stuff from overseas. And then the local capacity of the Venezuelans, it was about being the best dealers. So the people that was faster in getting a product from here, putting in this shelf, or finding a distribution channel. And it's a buyers and resellers. very, that's very, you can associate that with the kind of the Latin culture, very, very fast and finding the way, no? But not really like a, ground scientific knowledge on how things are made. Fast forward, the country is, a few years ago in completely shortage of everything because the prices of oil went down. Also, the production, the capacity of refining oil in the country went down because of lack of management. And then you see the whole economic collapse. Right? So it's like personally, I think like I now have no country, like in some way, which is okay as well because then you overcome nationalism and then you become a different type of person that embraces with other values. But I've seen it, right? And also at the same time, I left Venezuela to go to Barcelona, and I landed in the Institute for Advanced Architecture of Catalonia, which has been collaborated previously with the Center for Bits and Atoms at MIT. I came in a very particular moment in which the institute was basically like 3 people, and I was an intern, and I was just in the, maybe in the right place at the right time. A lot of things in my life happened like that. And I got introduced to this idea of Fab Labs, right? And say, hey, we have been working with this professor, this physicist, Professor Neil Gershenfeld. He's developing this research roadmap on trying to create these laboratories around the world. By the time there were around 8, there is this book that is called Fab, From Personal Computing to Personal Fabrication. And when I started to read the book, it said like there was a click. It's like, okay, this sounds like something interesting. Like it's more interesting to what I'm supposed to do, actually. No? So I engaged into the setup of Fab Lab Barcelona. So actually, I set up Fab Lab Barcelona with a couple more people. I helped it grow it. I kind of developed its agenda for 14 years until I came to Bali. No? But there were some moments in which I saw things happening directly from industry and also from this space of open innovation. No? One is see the power of open knowledge, right? In projects like Arduino. I don't know if some of you have heard about it, but it's like an electronics prototyping platform. So basically, it's like a super simple computers that you can connect to your own computer, and you can speak human language, code it, and program this tiny computer, and then you have inputs and outputs, and you assign behavior. Okay. It's very simple. It's like you say, you put a sensor, and then a temperature sensor, and a simple thing, no? And then you put an actuator, which is a little fan. And then you put in the program, you say when the temperature is this high, turn on the fan. Basically, you're telling that. So for those simple things to much more complicated things like making like autonomous robots. No? But that's the starting point. Yeah. So kids start to learn about that, and you start to see the innovation coming out from a very basic computer, $20. It's just $20, and people start to be enabled with these tools. Then I saw at the same time how, for instance, 3D printing, which is a very old technology. The first patent of 3D printing was published, I think, late 70s, early 80s, right? And it's always been like a technology that has been in industry, especially automotive industry, and that relates with a whole model of development of the 20th century on developing technologies to move things, right? So we need better ships, better cars, better highways, better trains, because with the mindset is, let's move things faster. Yeah. Let me get the raw materials from here, let's put it here in this factory, let me move it here. I want to be the fastest, the best, the most efficient, right? So 3D printing was being used in that industry. And then between 2005 and 2006, one of the patents of one technology of 3D printing, which is called fused deposition modeling, which is basically melting plastic and put it in a bed and building stuff, was released, was expired, right? And a professor in the UK took this patent, and he assembled a 3D printer of a couple hundred pounds or dollars called the RepRap, and put it online. So that basically took like one big company that was owning the patent was selling the 3D printers a year before $20,000. It took that price down to 300, right? And then not only that, but that also created a whole ecosystem of companies that were developed around the other 3D printers. No? So now people is creating machines and sell 3D printers, right? So that's an example of things I have in witnesses. I also have seen the growth of a Fab Lab network. We opened the Fab Lab Barcelona. It was Fab Lab number 10-ish, right? Nowadays, there are 2,500 labs. So I've seen it growing. I've seen how people engage with technology. I see the potential, but also I see its weaknesses, right? Like there are some challenges that we need to overcome as well, which comes related with, let's not just focus on technology, but let's assign a different purpose to that technology, and that's our work.
And that's the purpose. So just quickly, so people maybe who are here, who are tuning in on Instagram, so you have an event coming up in Jimbaran. So just tell everybody what the website is, what date it is, just so they have it in the name.
I'm a terrible salesperson. So the event is starting the day after tomorrow. The action starts from Saturday, actually, but we have all this network of Fab Labs, 2,500, which is based also on the research roadmap developed at the Center for Bits and Atoms at MIT. Professor Neil Gershenfeld himself is coming. We're going to have scientists from Stanford, from other European universities, people from all these labs in the world coming. It's called the Bali Fab Fest. And it's the largest digital fabrication event in the world, happening in Bali.
Round of applause.
Which
the largest digital fabrication event in the world comes to Bali.
Yeah. It's happening in Jimbaran, the Jimbaran Hub. It's going to be 10 days, but it's like many events in one event. So, for instance, we have an open day, which is Thursday, the 20th of October, in which you can bring kids. It's like the perfect moment to be exposed to whatever is happening, and also some local makers who are going to be sharing which are their projects. We have people developing their own synthesizers, musicians, for instance, people developing electric bikes, etc., etc. So it's all about sharing what people is doing in that day. The 21st of October, we have a symposium day with more than 20 speakers. All these people that I listed before, including many others, being in a kind of a TED-style kind of event during all the 21st. And you can come, choose one of those days. You can get one ticket for one day. You can come for the symposium. You can just come, be curious on the 20th. It's for free. So our goal is for you to get exposed to that, and because it doesn't matter how much I explain you can see I start to speak and I keep going. But until you see it, you will not believe it.
It's true, right? It's true. So
really printing. I know.
I really want to see a 3D printer in action. They've just had one installed that was 2 meters high or something. So anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing it. Question. So earlier on, you said that being in the right place at the right time has happened to you quite a lot. Is what you said, right? I'm not sure. I pick up stuff, right? It's a bit crazy. So why do you think that is?
It's funny. We were talking today. We were coming in the car with Caro and Ida, part of our team, and I was telling them that because there are other stuff that happened, I should not say in public yet, but it's like
there'll be a private session afterwards. We're going to ask him that question, right? Natalie, remind me. We're going to ask him in private when I still have the Instagram camera going, but not the other ones. All right.
It's like this kind of random meetings with very high profiles happening from one day to another, right? And then Ida says oh, you are very lucky. You are able to replicate this all the time. All this time, these things are happening to you, right? And then Caro says, well, yeah, but it's also the part of the previous work you do as well, no? Yes. It's kind of a bit of the two, but also, is it? I don't know. I'm not special. At all. It's just, I don't know.
The special ones always say that. Have you noticed?
No.
I'm not special at all. It's like, no, you actually are. All right.
Yeah, but it's about it's identifying the potential of something, no? And then I feel it's also when you have a purpose, at least or you feel it. It doesn't need to be you don't need to paint it exactly. What is it? But kind of you feel what's your purpose. It's a lot of feeling. Then you get to do things that you know that you are in that direction, right? And you know also when you are not, right? And you know when you're like okay, let me go through this, but. And then there's other moments in which you are reminded, okay, you're on track. It's because these magic things happen, and then, okay.
All right, I got a question, right? Very direct, very clear, right? So, short example from you, okay? Because I know you like to speak as well. We can go on for hours, you and I. It'll be 4 hours later, everyone else is like...
Sorry
All
about
right.
that.
No, don't be sorry. There's nothing to be sorry about. It's great. So here it is, right? So this show, SpeakuP Monday, it started off as it always is, because it's the container. It's about people inspire people, and unity and diversity, which is the motto of Indonesia, right? Bhinneka Tunggal Ika. So give us an example, right? Short one, of like how you think in terms of if there's something that you would like to achieve, what are the steps that you take to try to achieve that? While I give you some time to think, the reason why is because there's someone here, maybe more than one, who are probably in a similar situation of, you know what, I would love to do a Fab Lab. I would love to create something. There's a burning desire that I have within me, but I'm really not sure how to get it out. I'm really not sure what to do or take the next step. I have a feeling about it, but I'm not sure what it is. And no pressure, but words coming from you, words impact human beings in a really powerful, positive way, or negative, but today is all positive, right? So what is the process, if there is one, that you follow to get something achieved that you really want to do?
Yeah, I think, I was processing, because I don't think a lot about that process, but it's, I guess you have a feeling of that something needs to happen, and then you push the system, right? Or whatever, the person or the organization or whatever, you push and you let it go for a bit, right? And you see the response. And you see how it comes back, and then, and then you push again, and then you see that you start to dance with that other, being or whatever that it is kind of part of the process of making something happen. Then you feel that, right? You know that it's going to happen. And then it comes the implementation. In the implementation part, I have an amazing team that I can rely on, right? I asked Kate, this can be done, how we do this. I asked, do we have money to do this? This kind of thing to Lucas, to our other person. Then, do we have a team to execute this? So it's part of I think initially a feeling, like organizing the event in Bali was a lot about that. I got exposed first to the opportunity to make this happen in Bali. Again, a series of coincidences. And then it's hey, Bali people, my partners, should we do this? And then I get the feedback. It's okay, the dance starts. And then we started to make it grow, and then we're going to have almost 500 people coming starting this Wednesday for this event, and, kind of half Indonesian and international. A lot of people traveling after the pandemic and coming and engage with the potential that we can demonstrate. I think we're putting also ourselves out there and say, okay, can we really put this, can we really solve people's need that you were saying? So the Fab Island Challenge is one of those things that is going to happen in the coming week, no?
So then what I'm getting from that is that, so you have the idea of what it might be, and then you push for it, but then importantly, you let it go to see what the feedback is. Yeah. And it's a sequence of that pushing, not pulling, but pushing and allowing. Yeah. And then you get those coincidences, let's call it that. I call it providence. Yeah. But you get these coincidences which come up, which show you that you're on the right track.
I think so. Yeah. I'm not from the school of you can make it happen wherever you go, over whatever it needs to make it happen, right? I've seen it very. I've been near people that strong leadership. They show you make it happen. You go. You're like a tractor, right? Like a big truck going, and then you achieve it, and we did. I don't feel that's rewarding enough. It's more rewarding when this is coming. I can push. I like that role on pushing. But I also like to see the dance, all the parts coming together and creating the thing. Otherwise, it's just you do it in your own home. That's it. If you want to do it for yourself.
Love it, brother. So what we're going to do, we're going to go to questions, right? So Guzman and Ayu, you got the third mic ready? Yeah? Is there a third mic ready? I think I'm getting a hell yeah. Third mic ready. So what that means, everyone, is that in about 3 or 4 minutes, okay, if you have a question, just raise your hand and this microphone will come around, okay? Now, This microphone is very directional. So if you do this, you're not going to hear anything. So just point it at your mouth, this particular style of microphone. So we're going to come to you in about 4 or 5 minutes, okay? So just think if you have a question. Remember, no question is a silly question. Some people get a bit, oh, I can't ask that question because it's a bit silly. No such thing as a silly question. Those of you who are clear about your question understand that there's other people here who are having the same idea as well, but maybe don't have the courage to ask. So by you asking your question, you're doing a great service to somebody else as well, all right? So now, Thomas, you said earlier on, right, there's a reason why Bali is perfect for this, right? So what is that reason, or those set of reasons? Why do you say that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still learning, about, because I think like you never end, discovering things in this particular island, and, in the entire Indonesian archipelago, even more. But there are signs, no, of things, and many of you that live or here as expats or the locals know even better, of course. But this kind of the idea of a collective living that I think that we need to learn more from. I love again, like maybe we idealize, and I know the really details, but the Banjar way of living, no, the kind of agency that Banjars have over the territory, the decision-making process, all the social construct of the Banjar and the family life. I find it fascinating, because you're kind of, and this you wouldn't like when you are a teenager. You're forced to be less individualistic and get out of your room and do things for your community. But I think that that's something that invites us to think about not like an overall general collectivism at like a blank slate on everyone, but it's like this more like a fragmented, very unique collectivism that manifests itself very differently between one community and another, right? Which is fascinating as well, no? So that kind of a community production kind of way is where I see, okay, what if within Banjars we have, small production capacity, right? What if within the Banjar scale we have waste management, we take plastic, we either turn it into energy or we turn it into materials that can be 3D printable, that can make houses, furniture, no? So we kind of reduce the travel distance of waste, no? And then infrastructure Banjars or villages to kind of manage with their own production capacity at the local scale. So I feel like there is a lot of potential to, again, and I insist, this is not solutionism. This is like opportunities to try things. And there is local people that is doing this, Pacma de Artana and BitHub, which is an organization that has been trying this approach to the Banjar creative space, are doing it. They have been doing a prototyping this with 10 Banjars, and we're coming together, and they have been doing the design thinking and innovation, and we're bringing like the digital fabrication agenda and the circular economy agenda and see what we can do at the Banjar scale. And then when you extrapolate that to the Indonesian archipelago, that's another beautiful template to try distributed model of production, right? So instead, again, of shipping everything to all the islands, you have local production capacity. And then you can have micro factories that produce on demand with local materials, what people need, and maybe some items that are imported, but not everything, right? The same with energy production, But we're going to have a speaker in the event, Nadia Fabina. She's working with Ocean Thermal, which is like a infrastructure for 5,000, 10,000 people of energy generation between the change of difference of temperature between deep water in the ocean and the water in the surface. So you can generate energy from that. Cesar Harada, which is another amazing participant and leader on this field that is coming to the event, is developing energy generation pods of hydrogen that float in the ocean. And he's going to build it and test it starting this week, no? So then you start to see, like, in agriculture, the same, like, how you can, with hydroponics, you can produce food locally. How we can test in a highly distributed territory new distributed models of production, right? And more sovereignty at the local level to handle with their own problems, with people in their own problems. So, yeah, that's the fascinating thing I see about Bali and Indonesia to test this. Yeah.
Just want a quick straw poll. So remember, we're going to go to questions in a second, but just a quick raise of hands, make sure everyone's awake. I know, but everyone's taking it in, right? I can see people just going like this, the head's going.
Yeah, I don't have punchlines for jokes.
No, you don't need punchlines, man. That's why we're here. You know, yin and yang. All right, raise of hands, right? You got that. You got it. So, if I say Tri Hita Karana, raise your hands if you know what that means. Be honest. Tri Hita Karana. Okay, raise your hands if you don't know what it means. Yeah? It's okay. Raise them high, people. Raise your hands, people. All right, good. All right, so then I will try to explain, but remember questions. Remember that. Before I explain it in the way that I will, what I got to say is that, so I'm obviously from the UK, born in London, you can hear the accent, traveled around the world doing lots of different things, became a tourism architect, which is what I do now, here in Indonesia. As I mentioned before, working with government, tourism boards as well, creating solutions for a multitude of different industries, right? So I'm across 10 different industries here, so I have a really good understanding, finger on the pulse of what's happening, from sustainability to solar tech, from music and entertainment to, name it, blockchain. Okay, here's the thing. Tri Hita Karana is probably the most important philosophy which I have ever learned. I'm now 52 years old, I'm about to become 53. That's how I see it, right? So let me quickly explain it to you. So Balinese traditional philosophy, some refer to as the way to happiness or the way to prosperity. The way which I like to explain it to people is in the context of business. Why? Because people can relate to that, right? But this is good for business, it's good for individuals. You can relate it to anything. And this is why I love what you do, right? So the first one, imagine a triangle. Okay, 3 points. At the top of the triangle, and imagine that, you know, the question that you ask yourself is, what is the impact of my initiative, project, or business on X? X being what I'm about to ear point now. So the first one is human to God. So what is the impact of the project, initiative, or business that I'm doing now on culture, customs, tradition? When I slide down to this point over here, so what's the impact on environment, sustainability, regenerative systems, policies, and practices? And the third one over here is human to human, prosperity. So what I'm doing, the initiative, the business, and so on, what is its impact on prosperity? Which, again, in business is about saying, you know, we're in the impact field. Like SpeakuP Monday is #1 for entrepreneurs and social impact, right? And if that project doesn't know how to be sustainable financially, it's a very difficult model to scale. So when you add these three things together, you create a conscious ecosystem, a conscious business, a conscious person, right? So it's really valuable. Another one, Tri Hita Karana, Pancasila. Definitely study that for those of you who don't know what that means. Pancasila. Got to study that one. Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, unity and diversity, is a motto of Indonesia. If you don't know that, you know it now. And Takomasi, the giver becomes the receiver becomes the giver. All of these things make Bali and Indonesia incredibly well placed for projects like these, which are there to incubate and accelerate projects that uplift humanity, as well as can be sustainable financially, right? So, having said all of that, completely forgotten where I was, but I'm exactly where I need to be. I think we were going to questions. So, does anyone here have a question? Raise your hand. Do not be shy. Point this microphone to your mouth. No? Okay. So while they're thinking about it, over here, Natalie, okay, the microphone might reach you. So while we get the microphone to Natalie, that might take a while. You might have to stand up, darling, and come over here. So tell us about the $1 microscope, because I think that is phenomenal. $1 microscope.
Yeah, that's, I've been trying to put in public the kind of people that is coming, right? Like part of this community is, as I said before, like a very hardcore scientists which are not doing science for the sake of science or to publish papers in the more traditional sense, but they are looking on how science can get to society. And one of them is like a person that's kind of well known, is Manu Prakash from Stanford University and has Prakash Lab. And he's being well known by Time Magazine, he's a TED fellow, by developing a $1 microscope. So anyone can do lab analysis anywhere at their hands, no? And then he's creating other type of tools that would allow, for instance, he has like a manual PCR machines that you can do like a very simple PCRs, which we know now what is PCR very well, but without using electricity, no? And this is very helpful in remote communities. And he's gonna be coming and working with a team on two things. One, in the health of oceans, and using these tools, the microscopy tools, looking at the very small things, using low-cost tools. For instance, like looking at the water you drink, for instance, or the water that you shower with. It will be interesting. And that's monitoring water and ocean. And then on the other hand, he's also monitoring the health of humans. And a lot of his work is going to be based on using these tools to monitor malaria, which is a big issue in islands like Sumba and other tropical places. No? So it's really people committed not only to create the science and the next big thing and sell it and cash, but it's actually people looking at putting their brain power, which, so it's not, as you can see, we're not great in advertising, but putting it into actually solving real problems of people. Right?
Real problems locally. I love that. So, Natalie, you have a question. Thank you, my brother. Yeah. Tomas!
Wow, okay. Is this, yeah.
Yeah, just give us a moment. Guzman will switch it on.
Yeah. Okay. Now, yes? Yes. Okay, well, first of all, it's such a joy to look at someone and listen to someone who is obviously super passionate and inspired by what he or she is doing. So thank you for just sharing your passion and inspiration. It's a joy to watch and listen to. So that makes me curious. Where does your passion come from? The two questions. First, where does this passion of yours come from? And also, from a personal point of view, what in the work that you do gives you the greatest joy?
I don't know. You don't know where these things come from, to be honest. It's impossible to tell. It's kind of an aggregation of events, and then what happens in your life, you start to make sense of it and give it some kind of explanatory reasons. I said before, the story of being born in Venezuela and then being in Barcelona. I studied urban design when I was in Venezuela, and Barcelona was at the mecca of urban design, and I ended up in Barcelona working with the mayor of Barcelona. It's okay, and then having this calling again and staying here during the pandemic. It's just falling all these kind of, I would say, very, hearty kind of decisions. Also, the biggest thing that happened, they were not planned, and they are decisions that you take you have 5 minutes to decide what you're going to study, or do you decide to stay and leave your everything packed in Barcelona, and you decide to stay here or go back and be in the safety of the European bubble in the pandemic. So I stayed, and that opened up a whole new world, and then you feel it's feeding back that thing which you cannot tell where it comes from. And then what gives me a lot of joy is when the coincidences happen. Mm-hmm. It's because it's there are checkpoints. There are definitely checkpoints. It's kind of maybe this conversation. Then someone do that. Yeah, hey, can you come here? And then suddenly something else expands and unfolds. So that's definitely what is really nice. Coincidences, the best.
You're interesting because I see you as a bridge. Great question, Natalie, as usual. Okay. Audience, tell me if I'm right. Tell me if I'm wrong. I don't care either way. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. So this man here, what I notice is, and maybe we'll put this down to the Venezuelan in you, but he's moving, right? You've noticed? He's like fluid, right? This is you. You're here and you're moving and you're flowing. You spoke about dance a lot, right? So when you go through this process of imagining, of trying to create something, you're in this dance, where you're giving, allowing. You called it a dance, right? Now, you also spoke about the scientist within you, because then going and testing, does it work? Get the feedback. Be led by that feedback to go forward. You mentioned about the things that you studied, right, as you came through, right? So like you have this scientist mind, but this dancer's body.
Kind of. It's been ages since I don't dance, no? Because maybe I dance every day, I don't realize.
You're dancing as you talk. Talking is a dance for you. I love it.
But you know what? I've been thinking also, like when you talk about the kind of things that you create, right? Like I realize that I don't. And this sounds like the kind of things I make are intangibles. And I like that part also, which is like using like a very core tangible technologies to enable intangible things. And then, and I have become like more into designing programs, educational programs, for instance, master programs. In Barcelona, we have a master that I run from here that is called Master in Design for Emergent Futures, right? So it's really like challenging the way we design things and making designers to think differently about the exercise of design, which is not creating a cup, but it's creating all the relationships that a cup generates, right? Which is a more systemic view on design. We designed another program, which is a Master in Design for Distributed Innovation, which is using this global network of labs and fab cities that have this, this goal of transforming the way we produce things, but creating the learning environment for designers to incorporate these tools in a new form of designing, which I think is crucial, right? So in a way, being a maker also, I've learned that, and again, like I kind of work with the team on creating the conditions for others to make things, if that makes sense. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that could be a 6-month program, that could be a 10-day event, or that can be, I don't know, maybe we're going to create an entire bachelor's degree here with some local universities in Indonesia, but that's exactly like making the conditions for things to happen. I'm really excited about that.
How can people, we get you, right? We get your passion, we get your determination, this ability to create opportunities and take them, right? And walk through it without fear. Even though fear might be present, you still walk. So, okay, here we have 30, 40 people, whatever it is, and those people watching online. Any other questions, please? We'll take the microphone there. I'm a big believer in what you've already spoken about, collectivism. You mentioned that word before when it comes to what you do, what you believe, and Bali being that Banja system, right? So how, if I asked you, right, how can people either here or online, how could they contribute to what you're doing? What would you say?
I think they should show up in the some day, between Wednesday and the 22nd. You can show up in the parties, show up in the conference day, show up in the open day, show up for the workshops. Just show up and see what's that connection. I think like that's we cannot put it more easily for everyone, because again, I wouldn't do good for anyone if I keep trying to explain to you what it means 3D printing and making and connecting with local scientists and global innovators. But it's like, I'm just telling, like, we are creating this thing, starting very soon. Just show up. That will be my suggestion for people that is really like willing to, maybe learn more or trying to contribute into something. And I'm sure that you will find something to do. Like that, I can guarantee you that you will find something to do or someone to connect with, and maybe go deeper in your curiosity. That might be fashion design, people doing biomaterial stuff, crazy shit, and replacing leather with kombucha leather, bioplastics. There's a whole biotechnologies space. There's all about like a metrology, like a microscopy, but also using other sensors to measure the pollution in the city, et cetera, et cetera. There's people working on new materials for 3D printing, that can be expanded to building like a large-scale 3D printers that they can use concrete and print buildings. So it's already happening. And some samples of that are going to be happening, just here in Bali. So, yeah, again, just show up.
So look, here's what we're going to do. So for the people here in the audience, so in about a few minutes, we'll bring this session to a close, and then we'll switch off the cameras. At which point you can ask some questions that won't be recorded, right? It'll just be the people here, because sometimes it's like that, right? Sometimes people want to ask, but they're just a little bit scared. They might be on camera. Am I going to say the wrong thing? Am I going to stutter? Am I going to do something else? I don't know. Oh, wait, right? So we'll do that afterwards. And then, so maybe we'll spend another 10 minutes after that, because it's getting pretty hot up here. I can see him wiping his brow. The water's gone, right? It's getting hot up here. So what we'll do is we'll do that, and maybe another 10 minutes or so. And then the team members actually here, can you raise your hands? Yep, one over here. Raise the hands. Put the hands up. Be proud, people. Put the hands up. Okay, so if anyone wants to know any more, speak to one of those beautiful people, okay, about what's about to happen, right? Bali Fab Fest. And obviously, you can have a chat to Thomas, but I've got a feeling he might be busy. But at least you have someone else to speak to as well. Now, was there one other question before we do that? Yes, over here. Great. We have two. Okay, cool. So if IU comes over, and then she'll trail that microphone over there. And remember, you've got the session afterwards to ask any more private questions, okay? All right, we'll just wait to switch that microphone up. Guzman, yeah. All right, yeah, you can speak.
Okay. From your speech, can I ask you maybe this little bit silly question? I want to ask you, before you get success right now, how many times you fail and got rejection? That's it. Thank you.
In which aspect of life?
In your career. In your business.
Yeah, well, I have its ups and downs, you know, it's anything. It's, again, like the kind of stuff we're doing is very weird. It's very difficult to put it in like I'm selling shoes, you know. I don't know, like it's very hard. I don't know what product I'm selling, to be honest. It's difficult for me to tell you what I'm selling. So, you know, so maybe I cannot measure the success or not on that, but I can remember sometimes like a very, I don't know, times in which things felt not so good, right? Like, for instance, I remember opening the Fab Lab, right, like in Barcelona. That was 2007, and there were only like around 10 Fab Labs in the world, right? We really had to drag people in, technically, you have to come and see this, no? And we were really weird, you know what I mean? And my father was concerned about what are you doing? What are you doing with your life? I don't know where this is going. Not really. This is the future, right? And it felt like at the start felt like a bit lonely, literally, alone in the lab and in the machines there. It's this doesn't make sense. I'm thinking this is supposed to be successful because people know the power of this and use the machine. So we need to find ways of bringing people to the lab. Yeah. 10 years after, we had the opposite problem. It's we don't have time to work because we have people showing up in the lab asking things. And there were over 1,000 Fab Labs in the world. It got crazy. We got a lot of attention. Went in national TV a few times. We won there was a legendary interview with Iñaki Gabilondo in the big TV, one of the best reporter of Spain. And we shoot at the lab, at our lab, about the future of these technologies. It was a beautiful moment, no? Like a peak moment. And then I've seen one of the challenging things now. It's seeing the, from maybe the last 5 years, not fading, but also with the promise that with the potential that we see, we are really far away from where we're supposed to be, in my opinion. And that feels very hard. You have to fight against, you're competing with the attention of so many other things. Looking for sponsors for this bloody project has been wow. It's been really, really, really difficult because we're competing with G20 and la. And then, I usually say people prefer to put money on gigantic LED screens and pay air conditioning bills rather than, supporting Indonesian university students to come and participate into this, to have access to MIT, Stanford professors, and that's challenging, But we're finding at the same time, at the very last minute, but it's happening. That's shifting. We're having a lot of local support. There's a lot of engagements from the very higher powers of the nation, all the way down to the local leadership in Bali, and also from the local community, from small, large companies. It's happening, maybe at a different scale that we imagine. That makes it challenging, but it's there, no? So I would say now, and this one of our, we have a foundation, Fab City Foundation, and we have a donor, which is based in the U.S. And they were asking us which are your biggest challenges from now or within the next 5 years? And I said, we need to provide evidence. Otherwise, this is going to be like eternal promise, and it will sound, just a bunch of geeks, cool nerds, just playing around with robots and machines to making useless stuff that satisfies their own ego because they can prove that they are very technical skilled, and that's a high risk to fail, no? Which I want to avoid. Yeah.
That's a great question. I know you have one more over here as well. One thing that comes up when you say that, right, and this is talking to whoever it is, they may be here or they may be viewing, most of the great projects take time, right? Most of the great projects take time. Now, whether you like Amazon or not, Jeff Bezos or not, is irrelevant. But it took him I think 10, 15 years before he got that. And, that question before, which is a great question about how do you respond to failure, that was a real question I heard underneath it all, is how do you go from failure to failure to failure, but keep on going with the same level of enthusiasm and belief when the world is looking at you saying, you are one crazy mother, blah, 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 right? That is the one that I believe people want to hear.
Yeah, to be honest, and coming back to the coincidences, there have been moments in which, it's not like I completely give up, but in some moments, the calling has come from, we had been, dealing with the everyday, and suddenly this donor found us. These kind of things, they came to us, and they changed dramatically what we do. So it's tricky, it's it's not I need to, this kind of, again, it's a selling thing, no, you have to stand up. No, it's okay. You have to also, go to your morning and then, be a little bit down, and it's okay not to be positive for some time, but then, be ready, because that thing is going to come back. And then it happened a few times that it just came back, and then it's okay, it's another calling. Okay, it's seriously, we have to do this. Okay, let's fucking do it, no? So it's tricky. I don't want to sell this image of the, we have to be strong and positive. No, fuck it, not. We are not strong all the time. We are not positive all the time. But I think that we need to be awake and with our senses and with our heart open to identify those moments when it's like a knocking the door, no?
That's right.
Okay, let's do this, no? So yeah, to be completely honest, it's a bit like that in my process.
My brother. Last question over to you. Yeah. Guzman to the mic.
Code that you organize, that any change is if you made a change, it's recorded and tracked, and the version control system makes sure that your change is integrated to my software, and it recognizes this contribution, right? Yeah. So it's kind of a beautiful way to enable collaboration. When you bring it to hardware, it's more difficult, right? And there have been a lot of platforms trying to build the right open source tools to do this online collaboration. We have collaborated with some of those, and to be honest, it's more challenging because there's a physical component of open sourcing things, and also the whole manufacturing chain, which basically is not that compatible. It's not that makes it not like a streamlined as it happens with software. I also believe that there's a lot of risk for free riding, meaning you can document and publish open source. An open source 3D print. I tell you the story of the MakerBot 3D printer. I don't know if you know that story. MakerBot is a child project from the RepRap project, the one that I mentioned earlier. This professor in the UK made a couple of hundreds dollars 3D printer. This a makerspace in New York, NY Resistor. They created this kit, MakerBot, and started to ship around the world. Actually, we bought some of those in Fab Lab Barcelona. Then they kept going, and then they were taking the contributions of the community and put it in the product, and they were selling. Brett Pettis became like one of the most hateful persons in the open source community, because then he closed parts of the MakerBot design, right? And he packaged it, and he sold it to Stratasys, which is one of the largest, it's kind of a Microsoft and Google. It was Stratasys and 3D Systems. Now that changed a little bit. So then he used all the open source contributions of the RepRap community, brought to the MakerBot, and then packaged it, put one part as a patent, and sold it to a company. Right now, that's a big risk. The other risk I see is also the lack of, the business model is very difficult also on open source. Why? Because I see many other things that are happening now. We are kind of living this schizophrenic life, no? And this comes with the kind of contradictions of me pitching all of this, and I'm wearing Nikes, we are using Mac computers, which are completely part of the problem. And it happens the same when you want to do open source things and try to make money out of it. It's we don't have the monetary system to operate within a new set of values. And money is very like a black and white. It doesn't accept other type of layers, that are part of a transaction between people. So that's, I don't want to be like a crypto bro, but blockchain technologies are really interesting in order to create a more complex ways of exchanging value between peers. So you can have a digital design can be a smart contract that embeds authorship, also rules in which you're going to be replicated, commercialized, et cetera, et cetera. No? So I hope that helped. I expanded too much, maybe, but
no. But you know now that whenever you ask a question, this man gives full responses, right? but that's the beauty, right? Because then the things which I had that come up, I should ask him that, get answered in his responses. So it works out perfectly. But thank you, my brother. I appreciate your question. I have one more over here, and then Natalie, you're going to come and sit here, my darling, and then you're going to tell them what's going to happen next week. Yep. So last question, and then we'll quickly have after that we'll go to the private session after that for anyone who wants to ask any other questions. Okay.
Hello. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Guzman, is she on the microphone?
Hello.
Testing. It's okay, darling. Just keep on speaking.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Thomas, for sharing. I really like what you're doing. I think it's interesting that you do this pilot project with Banjar, right? And my question, I guess, is around, have you come across resistance working with local stakeholders, and how do you overcome those? And another thing that you mentioned, you mentioned about open source, but you said it's quite difficult working with the hardware, right? So what's your strategy to make it more scalable? Thank you.
Yeah. So in relationship to the Banjar's work, me directly having the pilot project is being carried by BitHub, which is another collective, another company, an organization run by, I know Pac Made Artana, which is one of our speakers in the Bali Fab Fest, and some other people. No? They had been prototyping in the Banjar space, this kind of a new approach to design thinking, entrepreneurship, but not incorporating yet the digital fabrication and Fab Lab philosophy. No? So from what I know, I've heard, is that the challenges is the mindset challenge, right? This kind of, it's kind of, why should I push more to make change? Right? It seems like there are no problems. It's like a very comfortable life in Bali in some way, right? But there are problems that maybe we are not identifying them enough. And when you look in your community, I guess that most of you are exposed to the plastic problem, right? It's around all of us. And that's a perfect example of the kind of things that you can activate a Banjar with some tools, approaches, and try to see if it can be solved. No? There's still a lot of things to be done. I haven't started yet, right? For me, what I say is the Bali Fab Fest, the event, is kind of, first of all, it's like a sample to show what's the potential of creating this kind of approach to innovation and collaboration. but also for us, it's either the starting point of something very long in which we engage with other partners and start to do pilot projects like this for real, or we just realize that it's time to, I don't know, sell donuts, whatever. And then in relationship to the open source hardware and the strategies, from my perspective, and I mentioned this before, like if you ask me personally, I'm very interested in creating the conditions for things to happen. Why? Because I believe I'm not the kind of person that has the solution for all the problems, and I'm not like a mastermind that is just, I'm gonna think about what's the solution for that. Oh, I thought about it, and then my minions are going to execute it, right? It's more about like, okay, I really don't know. Like what I basically know is how to work with others in facilitating the creation of a space for bright minds to come and try to solve the problem, which that's a big thing because people don't have that opportunity. That's the other thing, the lack of opportunities for people to be creative. Like they're forced to be creative in a different way. It's like you innovate or you die. You innovate on trying to make your company to create income and then to pay the bills, and that forces you to innovate. But it's like a rat race, right? Like it's another form of innovation. Like it makes you part of the system. I want to advocate to getting funds, getting whatever kind of support we can take from literally anyone to invest in creating these open innovation ecosystems, these spaces like Fab Labs, Maker Spaces, Super Labs in Indonesia, and attract talents, international, local, and create the conditions for things to happen. And then we will see. I think we have the opportunity to figure that out. We're just looking at to another place when trying to solve things. We're looking at, okay, how is this profitable? Okay, how this is going to pay the bills? And I understand, I just had a kid, we have a little baby girl. You start to think differently. You have to provide.
Ooh, welcome to fatherhood, brother.
Yeah, no, but then, you have to do it. It's part of that, again, the schizophrenic game of playing within the system and trying to change the system while you're playing within the system. No? So, that's it.
Thank you for your question, my darling. Appreciate it. Okay, so lastly, if you could pass the microphone to Natalie, and then Thomas. So just think, we're going to close out very shortly. If there's anything that you have left to kind of say, if you don't, that's cool. If you do, then feel free to let us know. And we're going to get that to Natalie. Then after Natalie, we'll hear from you. And then we'll go to private questions after that. So Natalie is a wonderful, wonderful coach for women. I think you focus in. And next week on the show, we have a panel inspired by you. And please let everyone know, so if they'd like to come, they know what it's about.
Woo, okay.
We just wait for Guzman to mic it up.
Thanks, team. Well, first of all, Robert, thank you for the opportunity. And so next week will be a panel, a women's panel. I'm super excited to do this, and we will feature 3 brilliant and incredible women. And well, we welcome you to just join a very real talk about what it truly, truly takes to carve your own path to success, whatever we put into the meaning of the word success. So it will be an episode where 3 brilliant women will be sharing their personal stories. And well, we have women from Ethiopia, from Australia as well. So it will be super exciting. I just had a meeting with them today. And my only concern is how to fit the conversation into like a 1-hour talk. So yeah, just get ready to be inspired because these women are truly, truly amazing. And what we really want to do is to share part like you did here. Most often we see these successful people and what goes behind it. One of you asked a question like, what's the setbacks? What's the failures for failing forward that's actually required to create your own new version of success? So that's what's happening next week. Yes.
Great. Thank you so much, Natalie. Really looking forward to that. It's been We did this one before, and it went down really, really well, and I'm sure this will as well. And just happy that you put the hand up, and we're gonna do it. It's great. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. So we are coming towards the end of the show, my brother Thomas. It's been an absolute pleasure. Before I do that, I just want to thank Ichi, brother Guzman, sister Ayu over there from Tropical Nomad. As Natalie said, next week 6 o'clock. Come pre-networking, 6:30 we go live, and you know what the topic is. Thank you very much indeed, Natalie. And look, I'm just happy that we managed to do this. Obviously we have Bali Fab Fest coming up. I think the 12th to the 22nd in Jimbaran Hub in Jimbaran. And I'm looking forward to definitely attending and playing with some 3D printers and just this tech that my mind can get pictures of. I want to play with it. I want to feel it, right?
Can I say something more?
Yeah. So any last word from you? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I would say is imagine that this is gonna be one of the first steps to build a totally different material ecology around us. That in the future you're gonna be able to program your own objects and they're gonna be able to make themselves. And that's a very old technology. That's how nature works, right? So we're looking at the beginning of that with simple tools, very numb tools. 3D printers are very stupid. They just do what we do. We just do what we tell them to do. But we're going to see the beginning of some bigger transformation that it needs to happen, right? And I have to say another thing. I'm very thankful because I felt very safe here and very supported, even though I gave these super long, boring answers, and I said some complicated shit. Thank you very much, and also for I was not expecting too many questions. That's really kind of you. That's very supportive, great attitude, and come to the fest. Thank you so much. Thank you, Robert.
Round of applause, everyone. Thomas, thank you so much.